Let's Talk Books, the official podcast of BookExpo America, BEA. On this episode, we talk with Steve Bercu, co-owner and CEO of BookPeople, located in Austin, Texas. Steve, what three things make BookPeople such a special independent bookstore?
Well, number one is a community. We're right in the middle of this community, and we interact with the community. So it's not just that we do something to them; they're doing something to us, and it's happening both ways. So the booksellers I have here are all here basically because they love these books they're around, and they love talking about them. And so their ability to talk to people about what they really like and sharing their bibliography with the people who happen to stumble on them and share that taste, that's another great thing we're doing. And then, last but least sexy, I suppose, is just that we're a very efficient operation. So we actually operate, this is the book business, and that's the part that seemed to be absent a lot of times. When I began in the book business, I would notice that people were crazy about books and knew everything about every author and all this stuff, but they didn't know anything about running a business. And you got to be able to run the business so that you're here to provide the books, be part of the community, have the booksellers, all those things. If it isn't a business, the rest of the stuff doesn't happen.
Can you talk about the challenges you faced when you took over the store and the turn of events that placed BookPeople into the community as well as on the map?
Well, when I took over, the store was floundering pretty dramatically. We had been losing money for a few years. We had a staff that was really straight out of High Fidelity. Everybody's sneering at other people's choices of books. It was a time when there were lots more tattoos and piercings and stuff. We seemed to have only hired people with tattoos and piercings at that time. It wasn't tragic, but it wasn't exactly inviting. Hostile, pierced, tattooed people with purple hair talking to 50-year-olds in Austin was probably not the best choice. The store was just not keeping it together. So when I got here, there were some funny things that happened to start with, but over a relatively short time, I needed to change out a lot of what was going on. And I came from a business part of this. I did not come from a background of having been a buyer at some bookstore or having worked at a publishing house and helped create books or anything like that. I'd come from a background that business was more of what I knew about. And it was obvious that we had people that were hired to do things that just weren't happening. So I had to first figure out who I could hire that would be able to do those things. What was the kind of person who could actually buy books in a bookstore in a way that made sense as opposed to what we had at the time? Or who was the kind of person that would market in a bookstore? And all of this is in the real context of the book world, which is to say that you don't pay that much. So people aren't getting paid a whole lot of money to do these things, so there has to be an underlying love of being in a bookstore or being around books to do it in the first place. And so it took a little while to find those people, probably in the grand scheme of things, 3 to 8 months to start actually making the changes that began to transform things. Also, I immediately felt like it was very important to get more involved with the greater book world. At the time I came into BookPeople, it was definitely a one-off operation. Nobody here communicated with the rest of the book world, that people didn't go to educational possibilities like BEA, which was happening still even in those days. No one went. No one really talked to other bookstores too much. Nobody really was in touch with anybody. So it struck me as that would be a good thing to do. Then we started going to those things and meeting other booksellers and finding out what people did in other places and how they solved the problems that everybody seems to have, which are bound to be similar because it's the same business, but in different places. So I went looking for that stuff. And then, of course, I started thinking about the fact that we'd been around even at that time for many years, but the only connection with the community was taking lots of tables to sell books at lots of people's events. And those, once you actually did the math and looked at the business results of doing those things, in general, were a huge waste of time. They weren't marketing the store very well, and they weren't generating sales at all to speak of, or certainly not worth the time and the labor dollars and all that were going into doing it. So I started altering that and looking for something that would be a more real connection to this community than saying yes to everybody who wanted to have you come and sell some unknown group of books at their event based around something, whatever that something might have been. So we began changing those things. By a year or so later, certainly by 2001, the Austin Independent Business Alliance idea fell on me. At that time, the only way I knew to get started was to write a physical letter to the names of what I thought were like 50 independent businesses in town to see if they would come to a meeting and talk about forming something like that, because I had no way of knowing anybody's anything. At those days, you really couldn't just get everybody's email and start writing emails. It was like really hard to get it all together. So we had a meeting, and a bunch of people showed up, and 4 or 5 people stuck around, and we then had another meeting, and then we kind of got going. And we got going with, 5 or 10 or 15 businesses maybe, and things started picking up in that department. We started doing things. We dreamed up a couple of events we could do that would be fun maybe and make people think about independent business. And it was astounding to me even then that it was slightly difficult to generate the, to me, seemingly incredibly easy concept that if we got people interested in independent business, that once in a while they would come to our independent businesses when they needed whatever it is we had. The straight in the door theory prevailed all the time in those days. If it doesn't get me someone in the door today, I don't want to do it, which seemed to be somewhat short-sighted and also counterproductive. Anyhow, it got going. 2002, we caught what would on the surface appear to be bad luck, but turned out to be really good luck. And that was that the city of Austin put out a $2.5 million subsidy for a developer to develop a building that is diagonally across the street. And in that development, the only tenant that they acquired was Borders. So it dawned on me that having Borders come in literally 300 feet from my door and about 600 from Waterloo's door would be really bad news for us because these are very thin margin businesses, and if we lost 10% of our sales to these guys, it would be devastating because we couldn't do it. And okay, we already had 3 Borders in town, and we already had 6 Barnes & Nobles, so it wasn't like we were worried about competing. We were just irritated that the city was subsidizing the development, and it was kind of like we were paying to subsidize someone to come in and try and wipe us out. So I had this brilliant idea of talking to John Kuntz, is the owner of Waterloo across the street, and one day, and said, John, why don't we put together a bumper sticker and put Keep Austin Weird on it and put both our logos on there, and since we're not partners or anything, we'll just put support local businesses on the bottom to connect the two of us to each other. And so he said, I don't know, maybe not. But I said, come on, John, let's do this. It can't cost that much. So we got 5,000 bumper stickers, and we split them, put 2,500 in each store. And I forgot about it immediately. About a week later, John calls me up and says, you got any more of those bumper stickers? I said, I haven't a clue, John. I'll go check. So I go downstairs, and we don't have any more bumper stickers, and he doesn't either. So we order 10,000, and it took off from there. So what happened then we got in this huge fight with the city because we decided to engage the city council in our irritation about the subsidy. And then the Austin Independent Business Alliance and BookPeople and Waterloo and another group called Livable City decided to do I got together with these economists, an economic impact analysis, because it dawned on me that we were going on all the time about how swell it was to shop in independent businesses, but was it really swell? I mean, was it quantitatively swell? Was there an actual reason for a consumer economically to shop at a locally owned business? Because the bad mouthing in those days was it would cost more, and the only thing is it's good for you, but it's not good for anybody else. So anyhow, we put that together, that economic impact analysis, which I thought at the time would be some 15-minute exercise off the internet. They'd capture some numbers. It turned out that it had never been done before anywhere. The economists were stunned by that too, because they also charged us based on thinking it was a 15-minute exercise, but they couldn't change the price afterwards, we were happy to say. Anyhow, that came out simultaneously. The economic impact analysis came out almost exactly at the same time. It was about November of 2002 with the bumper sticker thing that we put together. So all of that got mixed up together. The bumper stickers had nothing to do with the Independent Business Alliance, but everybody mixed them up together. The bumper stickers didn't really have anything to do with BookPeople in Waterloo fighting the developers, but they got that mixed up together. And then we got about 7 months of front page newspaper coverage in Austin, day after day after day, of us fighting the city about them subsidizing this development that was going to undermine 2 local businesses, about this thing. And the Keep Austin Weird thing kept coming up every couple of days in the paper. The first one went out in November of 2002, the first bumper sticker. I got a woman sent me a picture 5 months later, April of 2003, of a Humvee with 2 bumper stickers on the back. One of them was BookPeople and one of them was Keep Austin Weird. And they were at the staging area outside of Baghdad, is where they were in the first invasion of Iraq, which we thought was great market penetration. It's in 5 months. So that started going. So the economic impact analysis, which for a normal person is somewhat dry, yields a soundbite that is not dry, and it's actually real, and that is that shopping at locally owned businesses provides about 3.5 times the local economic impact as shopping at chains. That was the thing. And since then, since 2002 approximately, these same economists have it's become their business. They've done these all over the country. They've done them in San Francisco, Chicago, Grand Rapids. They've done them in little towns. They've got a way to do them faster now with smaller towns. And basically they come up with approximately 3.5 times the economic impact everywhere. Meanwhile, with bumper stickers, we've given away about 300,000 of them over the years. They're all over the place. The first time I saw one, I was all excited. Now you see them they cut them up and spell different stuff out of them. They cut up the BookPeople in Waterloo use the same font and the same colors, so they cut our bumper stickers up and spell stuff on their bumpers, but everybody knows that there are bumper stickers. So that's been great. It keeps you in the middle of all of this stuff. Coffee shops are especially happy with Keep Austin Weird. They changed the 2 letters out, and it's Keep Austin Wired. I mean, they have those. There's hundreds of those all over town, with coffee shops, things stuck next to them. Lots of fun with that. So that was all fun. And, of course, the upshot of this is through no fault of their own, Whole Foods, who was moving across the street anyhow to their space, because they were our next door neighbor here. Somehow they got blamed for a whole lot of this stuff. So they kept being in the paper as being at fault somehow. And that really irritated Whole Foods, because they actually had nothing to do with it. I mean, they really did have nothing to do with it. So they somehow were able, and we're not certain, but it was the same developer who was doing the block for them. They somehow managed to force this guy to talk to us. And so we used to go to these hostile meetings. The Waterloo and BookPeople would go with these hostile meetings with the developer. And finally, at one of these meetings, there'd been so much bad publicity that this other girly thing we had nothing to do with, it was actually funny, was somebody chained themselves to the door of the Borders in North Austin because they were offended that Borders was like trying to put us out of business. I mean, Borders didn't know what was going on either, right? They just found a location they liked, and so that got tons of publicity. That was pretty funny, and Borders was having people were boycotting Borders, is what it turned out. I mean, somebody started some boycott Borders movement, and their sales had dropped about 15% in their 3 existing stores. They finally just pulled out of the lease and just quit. They went away. So we had a huge victory party. We won. A couple of bands came here. Patti Smith came here, and everybody was here singing. And Dave Eggers came. He had a band in those days. We had music and literature going on out in the parking lots out here. Big party. We had a lot of fun with that. And that was kind of like our step into the total community.
Let's Talk Books is a production of BookExpo America, BEA, the leading book and author event for the North American publishing industry. Join us in Chicago for BEA 2016, May 11th through 13th at McCormick Place. For more information on this episode in BEA, visit bookexpoamerica.com.